And here now for some analysis is CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, what do you make of all of this back and forth with Brett Kavanaugh and the New York Times story and them taking back part of that story? It's a mess.
It's an absolute mess. There's so much to unpack here. I'll try to do it in the Reader's Digest version as best I can. But look, first of all, Democrats are frustrated that this FBI investigation really might not have been much of an investigation at all. I mean, that was part of what the New York Times story was saying. So that's why part of the reason for them calling for impeachment, some of these candidates. Plus, Deborah Ramirez, that woman who said she was allegedly attacked by Brett Kavanaugh. Remember, Kavanaugh under oath said her story is absolutely false. Well, this New York Times story, in essence, corroborates Deborah Ramirez's story. So there's some wiggle room here. Look, here's the bottom line. All this is coming from a guy named Max Stier, who, oh, by the way, was connected somehow, some way to Hillary Clinton and all of that. So here we go again, New York Times, Brett Kavanaugh story. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not in good health, could be replaced if Donald Trump wins again in 2020. Therefore, the idea of trying to get Kavanaugh out as a Supreme Court justice, believe it or not, whether it be impeached or otherwise, and there is an otherwise, we can talk about that later, could be possibly a potential for Democrats here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of backlash for the New York Times here, and this publication has taken a bit of a hit with this story, right, David?
Right. She didn't recall, they didn't put in the initial information, as Amber pointed out, that one of the alleged victims never even recalled the story. How, if you are the New York Times, do you not put that information in your story? That should be part of the first or second paragraph of the story after the comma. Instead, they didn't do it, and that's a problem for the New York Times. And it really looks, it gives Trump more of the narrative of fake news, or that's what he likes to call it.
David, real quickly, let's try to bring in that gun control legislation that people are talking about on Capitol Hill. There's a bipartisan Senate legislation with Pat Toomey, the Republican, and Joe Manchin, a Democrat. What's the incentive for President Trump to advocate for that legislation if he's afraid that Democrats might move the goalposts, as he said in his tweet?
Yeah, the only incentive is because that's the only game in town. That's the only game that can win. It's a bipartisan bill. It calls for background checks, but not universal background checks. It doesn't go as far as the House bill. The House bill has virtually no chance of passing. So this idea that there's going to be a Rose Garden ceremony with Pelosi and Schumer and Trump, forget about it. It's not happening with that House bill, at least. The chances of that are as low as me eating healthy tonight, and that ain't happening. I guarantee you that ain't happening. Well, David